Monsieur Shakespeare! Ah, c'est resté le film de Shakespeare zombie.
Indeed, this is the end of Shakespeare 2018. Thank you very much to Jason, Lukash, and Steve for hosting a really fun read-along, readathon, I don't know what the heck, of Shakespeare, where in the month they all chose a play per week, different plays, and we got to either read or watch or dance to, or, whatever we wanted with Shakespeare. So in the final week, we had The Tempest with Jason, the Two Noble Kinsmen with Lukash, and Steve Donahue gave us a break to go on about the Shakespeare authorship controversy / conspiracy, whichever way you might fall on that thing. I guess I have opinions. And so, yes, starting off with The Tempest, which is the play I actually read, because I always just pick one to read and then I'll listen to or watch the other ones. And so, yeah, I read The Tempest, and this time through, I've read it, I've seen it on stage before. I'm always struck by that. In some of my readings of it, I definitely see, especially at the beginning, Prospero seems to be this old fellow who's like, "Are you listening to me, young'un? Are you listening to me, Miranda?" It's like, and she's like, "Yes, I'm listening to. Yes, you've told me the story before." There's a slight bit of that, hint of that. I think it's funny, there's a lot of times, especially with the greats, I'm always looking for the things that slightly undercut this character, like that we're supposed to like, oh, Prospero is the great magician. And it's like, well, he's the great magician who he got deposed as the Duke of Milan because he was stuck in his books. He was interested in the great fundamentals. And as such, his brother, who is definitely portrayed, and I think reading in the text, is an ambitious, venal guy, swooped in, appointed his own fellows because Prospero gave Antonio his blessings to, like, yeah, you do the ruling, the boring stuff. I'm going to be over here doing the greats of magic, but also it's a time of natural philosophy where magic and like sciences, I think, are kind of all interconnected, of that Renaissance time. We haven't split off into the scientific revolution yet. And so, but, he gives this guy the stuff, and you wonder, it's like, well, actually, was Antonio maybe the better ruler? I mean, that's a thing, I guess, for someone like Shakespeare and this time period. We're talking about, it's not like who's the better ruler. Just like with like Henry V, me having trouble with Henry V, of him like, oh, why is he going into France? He's like, this is obviously just an ambition, just a power play on his point. This is me negatively reading these heroes again. But having to try and kind of jar myself into a time frame, into a headspace where it's not about like, whether it's, it's about your rights, your God-given rights. And like, if you've got the legitimate claim to this, then it doesn't matter if you're shitty. It doesn't matter if you're half mad from syphilis or something like that. No, if you've got the right, well, then that's the right. And you should get, the other person is obviously in the wrong, even if maybe they're a better ruler. Someone who's like, yeah, I'm not interested in all the magics and all the philosophies and stuff like that. I'm interested in actually ruling, and maybe I'm a venal, self-serving guy, but there's a lot of politicians who are venal, self-serving people who've actually done a lot of good in the world as a side benefit from all their venality. So yeah, and I mean, it's interesting. I watched a couple of professors like talking about this. Garber, who Marjorie Garber, who I think Lukash actually talks about quite a bit, talking about like, well, people are in love with this being Shakespeare's last solo play. This is his farewell to the theater. Discounting the fact that he did go on and was like a co-author on at least, we think, 3 other plays. One of them is lost. One of them is The Noble Kinsmen, which we'll get to a little bit later. But so there's a little bit of a fantasy of like, we want to read the biography. We want to lay claim to Shakespeare, or whoever wrote the plays. Who knows? Maybe it wasn't Shakespeare. Maybe it was some rich guy, rich noble guy. Because Lord forgive us that it could be someone who's of more humble origins. How could they imagine what a king was like? How could a writer project themselves into anybody else's body except their own? Which is the logical conclusion, which I don't think a lot of the Shakespeare authorship questioners would intend their thing to go. But yeah, so I really enjoyed her take on it, kind of going through just all the different ways you can look at this. Obviously, there's the whole Caliban thing, which in very much in a modern sense, with our kind of our struggling with the idea of colonial rule and stuff like that, and just the sort of thing, is this like an African, like this is somewhere in the Mediterranean, so this is like kind of European African colonialism? Is this like new world? There's definitely been arguments for kind of a new world. It's just vague enough that that it gets claimed, and I mean, obviously, it's like this is the start of kind of the English Empire's discovering the new world and stuff like that. I gotta use my air quotes. So that's also an interesting thing. There's also the idea of this just being sort of all taking place in the kind of, this is the island. This is all very like this is the Tempest, and it's taking place on the island, and there is the girl, the woman. There is like, it's very elemental, and so like Caliban is sort of like a representative of kind of a lust, kind of an id thing. There's a psychoanalytic thing. There's the viewing it from like Plato's cave, that kind of elements thing. So there's that sort of thing. Like, this is a place out of time, because like at the end, Prospero is like drowning his books and breaking his cane, and he's going back into the real world, and there's like he's re-entering time where his every third thought will be of death. So there's that sort of that's a very kind of, to me, God, my Star Trek references again of there being, that the triumvirate of Spock, Kirk, and Bones is like a personality of an id, ego, and superego. I always go back to that. I don't because it is also slightly kind of very primary of showing a full personality represented by parts. And there's the idea of a ship of state at the beginning of this book. This play. We've got the ship getting storm-trooped, and all the nobles are out there trying to yelling at the sailors, like, what are you doing? It's like, and they're like, the sailors like, go away. We're the ones who are going to save us here. You have nothing to do with this. You're passengers on this thing. You're not the controller. This I got from this was another video. This is obviously not my own original thoughts, but just sort of a ship of state idea, and a natural right of like, your capacities, your capabilities versus hierarchical kind of like, this is how I'm the Lord, so therefore I have the power, and I should have the power, and stuff like that. Just the interesting ideas of like, Shakespeare probably was not a Democrat in our idea of a Democrat. He thought that people had more abilities, should be on top, and should rule the rest of us. Of course, then it being the question of like, how do you tell who's wise? How do you tell who's wise in a society, and how do you get them to be the ones that are ruling? So yeah, I mean, it's so many different layers peeling back, and just the whole thing. I think there is a very affecting thing here of this is of Shakespeare and stagecraft, and Prospero being this guy who's stagecrafting everything. He's manipulating his daughter into falling in love with this guy, making her think that, she's doing it on her own, and she's doing it against her father's wishes. And it's like, it's got that kind of like, fire to it. It's like, as someone who's sketching out this play, who's got Ariel doing the stage management, he knows how to manipulate the audience, as Shakespeare knows how to manipulate us. And there's something about Shakespeare that I do think it comes to the thing of like, he is a genius, and he just knows what power he has, and how this affects people. And I think there's a part of it, I feel like there's a part of him that goes, yeah, we are manipulative, like manipulatable as a species. That it's very easy to shape and mold and push us. Going back to Julius Caesar and having Mark Antony's speech to the crowd, and how that whipped the crowd up, and how easily he was able to mold it. There's that sort of thing of, I know what audiences are like, and I can, and that's saying something about human nature as well. So yeah. So that was the Tempest. As I said, this is the last solo play, and then we went on to, he had ones that he did with other people. This one I was, damn it, this is by Fletcher. I'm gonna say Fletcher. I'm gonna say Fletcher, like I know what I'm talking about, like I'm a Shakespeare scholar. I've got no clue. We'll say Fletcher. Who was like another, like, this is the thing, is like, people go like, wow, Shakespeare was standing on top of a pyramid of what apparently was just amazing playwrights. You got Marlowe, Fletcher, Johnson. Those are the ones that I can name off the top of my head, and I'm a dullard, so just imagine what someone who knows actually about the time could know about this. And so the Kinsman was an interesting play. The things that struck me to it were me with it were, hey, first we've got Theseus and Hippolyta again, and they're getting interrupted yet again. Like, oh, is this marriage ever going to happen? So that was kind of funny. He ends up having to go to war and taking out this guy, this evil tyrant guy, imprisoning our two noble kinsmen who pledged that they're just going to be like, they're going to be bros forever. They're going to be like basically married. They're like, there's a homosocial kind of relationship here, if not homosexual, but homosocial relationship here. We're going to be like this forever. And then they look out, and literally they finish that speech and they look out the window and they go, there's Amelia. It's like, I saw her first. And I mean, literally, I saw her first. That's why I should have her, is like one basis of the thing. And like, no one actually asks her whether, they want to be with she wants to be with one of these noble kinsmen. Of course, they are portrayed as such amazing guys that, she of course does. She says, oh, I mean, at the end of the play, she's like, I love them both. I can't choose. I can't decide. They're going to have to fight it out. And we have a kind of very dramatic thing. And they all ask their various intercessions, and they all get their wishes granted. So, as Shakespeare goes, that means things don't go so well. And so, I mean, I enjoyed it. It's an interesting way to end, just of Shakespeare, of in some way collaborating with another fellow. It makes me want to actually pick up some of that fellow's just solo plays. And I feel like I'm getting more and more into the language of this era by having had such a kind of intense flood of just one fellow's works. It'd be nice to branch that out. And I guess to finish off, I did finish off all the sonnets sent to me by Mark at Words Everywhere. Of course, the last one I read, as all great poetry lovers should do. I read in the car in the parking lot at Michael's while my wife was in getting some art supplies for one of her classes. And when she came out, I read the last sonnet to her. So I will spare you the indignity of hearing me read that final sonnet to you guys. But I'll just give my own little love cry to the four fellows: Jason, Lukash, Steve, and Mark. Thanks for this. Thanks for Shakespeare 28 Shaketube 2018. I really enjoyed myself, and I'm looking forward to next year. So yeah, start preparing, guys, and I can't wait to go watch all your videos now and not comment on them, because I'm incredibly verbose on camera, but not in comments. Bye for now. More videos later.